All right. So with that, let's first move on to the three questions of DS number properties. So what I would essentially do, in this webinar, I would not time you. I would ask you to mark still solving. Now, I would get a certain number of still solvings. Now, whenever 80% of you who mark still solving select any other answer choice from A to E, I would call it time. So I don't time you guys time yourself. So let's get 60 still solvings, please. I have 25 still solvings. Please click on still solving so that I can understand that you are attentive. And please do not mark an answer as of now. All right, 58. I need two more people. 59. One more. All right, that's great. So let's move on to the first question. This is the first question, and please take your time and solve the question out. All right, another 10 seconds. So let's take 10 more seconds. If you not mark the answers, please mark them. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, let me end the poll. And we'll not discuss about the answers as of now. Let's take all the three answers once you're done with the three questions. So I'll move into the next question. And before that, what I would want you people to do is, again, the same thing. Please select still solving in the poll here. And then I'll give you the next question. Let's get 60 people mark a still solving. I've reached to 50. 5 more. 2 more. Okay, 1 more. Thanks a lot, guys. Okay, so I'll stop broadcasting the results and let's go to the next question. All the best. All right, 5 more seconds for this question. If you have not marked your answers, please mark it. 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, so let me end the poll here. We'll discuss the answers, but towards the end of the session. And let's go to the next question. That is question number 10. Just give me one moment. What I would do is I'll clear all the answers. And all right, so please mark still solving. And then let's move into the next question. Let's get the still solvings, please. Okay, 10 more people. Come on, guys. 4 more. 3. 2 more. 1 more. All right. Thank you. Let's move on solving the questions. I'll not click on, I'll deselect broadcast, and let's move on to the next question. Question number 10. All right, 10 more seconds for this question. If you have not marked your answers, please mark your answers. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, let me end the poll here. And so what I would say is the answer choices that you guys have marked is fairly distributed, right? So that might be because you found the questions difficult. So let's get to know about that. So why don't you tell me how were these three questions? You can mark your answers in the Answer Atra's question pod. And I have a question from someone over here who asks me, would there be a time limit? No, in my sessions, we essentially don't have time limits. I asked people to select still solving, and when 80% of the class select an answer choice, I call it time. So I don't give you a time limit, but you guys decide on the time limit any question would have. Okay, so you guys are saying that the questions were difficult. Um, extremely difficult, all right. Medium to tough. All right, so basically we would try to solve these three questions again when towards the end of the session. And trust me on that, you would find it really easy once we are done with the warm-up section and the 7 questions that I'm talking about. Also in this session, we'd be talking about a lot of concepts, right? So let's get to that part and we'll start on the warm-up section. So in this warm-up section, we are going to discuss questions, the basic questions on divisibility and remainders. I would also give you a feedback on the current conceptual knowledge, and we'll also note down the key takeaways and the important pointers that we need to keep in mind to solve questions in the GMAT's context. Now, understand that these questions are not that difficult, and that is the reason the solution would be not that detailed, but I'm completely I know this that you people would find it perfectly fine. All right, with that, let's move on with the first question and the same process. We'll first select still solvings and then we would go to selecting the right answer choice. All right, just give me one moment. There was some technical error. So what I would do is it would just take me one moment. Just give me one moment, please. I'll upload the document once more. Yes. It would take around 20 seconds to load. So let's just wait for 20 seconds to load. It would take another 10 seconds. So just give it another 10 seconds and I'm pretty sure it would load at your end by then as well. taking some time. So let's just wait for another 10 seconds. I'm really sorry, but Adobe Connect essentially takes a bit of time when we upload a PPT to it. So let's just take another 10 seconds. And in the meantime, I've also started loading another file. So whichever loads quicker, I'll take that to the screen. All right, a lot of you have marked your answers, so let's call 5 more seconds. If you have not marked your answers, please mark them. 3, 2, and 1. So I'll end the poll here and broadcast the results. So 33% of you tell me that the answer for this question is choice C, and almost half the class tell me that it's choice A. So let's get to solving this question. Now, before I solve this question, again, a very simple question to all of you, and please put your answers in the answer Arthur's question pod. When is a number divisible by 4? What is the primary condition for a number being divisible by 4? Let's get these answers. Absolutely correct. Well done. So when the last two digits of any number is divisible by 4, the entire number is also divisible by 4, right? So let's get to solving this question. Now, the question tells me that Z is a 4-digit number whose digits are consecutive integers. Now, there can be a lot of possible scenarios. Now, Z could be an odd number or Z could be an even number. For an odd number, for example, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's definitely not divisible by 4, right? And for an even number, there might be two possible cases. One possibility is the last two digits may be divisible by 4, for example, 3, 4, 5, 6. The other possibility is that the last two digits are not divisible by 4, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4. So in the first case, we can say that Z is not divisible by 4. So similar to what we can say in the second case of case 2, the second category for case 2. However, in the first subcategory, we can see that there are few numbers which can take the value of z, which are divisible by 4. So the proper answer to this question is choice A and not choice C. So guys, people who mark choice C, because I can see 30 people who mark choice C, what I would want you to tell me is, where did you essentially falter? Did you again take numbers? So I am seeing that some of you took numbers here. For example, you have taken x plus 1, x plus 2, x plus 3, and you added all that up. Now, when you add all that up, what is the sum of the last two digits? It would be equal to 2x plus 5, correct? 2x plus 5. Now, you might have thought that 2x plus 5 at any point in time is always odd, so it cannot be divisible by 4, and that is the reason going to choice C directly. But what you also need to understand is, you do not know the value of x first. So for this question, since I'm not working with the sum of the formula, so 2x plus 5 essentially is what? The sum of the last two digits, right? But the divisibility of 4 is not around the sum of the last two digits. It just tells me whether the last two digits are divisible by 4 or not. So this is a mistake or a fault, or an area that you people faltered, right? So in this question, it was very much important for you to understand that we would not consider sum, but we need to consider the last two digits. Am I now clear to all of you for this question? If I am, can you please mark a yes in the yes no poll? Can you please mark a yes if I'm now clear? That sounds perfect. All right, so let me end the poll here and clear all the answers. All right, I'll end the poll here as well. And now we'll move into the third question. Now, before I move into the third question, we'll follow the same logistics. You click on still solving, we'll get to 60 people, and I will give you the next question. Let's get 60 people mark still solving. I have reached to 59, 60. That sounds great. All right, so I'll close broadcasting results and let's move on to the third question. All right, 10 more seconds for this question. So if you have not marked your answers, please mark them. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, let me end the poll here and I would broadcast the results to see that 65% of you have marked choice C, and around 1/6, that is 16% of you have marked choice A. Now, in this question, it is asked, what is the number closest to a very big number that is a multiple of 8? Now, I know that for any number to be divisible by 8, the last three digits should be divisible by 8, right? Similar to what we have for 4. For 4, we had the last two digits. For 8, we have the last three digits. So what are the last three digits of this number? It's 897, right? So what I would do is calculate the remainder that I would get when I divide 897 by 8. And upon doing that, I see that the remainder is equal to 1. So my number, the number that I am looking for, is either minus 1 to this number or a plus 7 to this number, correct? So only in those two cases, I would be getting a number which is divisible by 8. Now, with minus 1, I get 896, the number that ends with 896. And that is the answer to the question because I'm just moving one number from the number that is given in the question. However, if I go to a plus 7, then I'm moving farther away, right? I'm not moving 1, but I'm moving 7 blocks. So that is the reason why choice A is not the answer. I hope it's clear to all of you. So what we would do is we would move to the next question. Let me clear all the answers and reopen the poll for you people to tell me are still solving. And then let's go to the next question. The next two questions are really nice questions. I have 30 people who have marked still solving. Let's get another 20 more. Let's get to 60. We have 55. Okay, all right, thank you. Let's move on to the next question. All right, 10 more seconds for this question. If you have not marked your answers, please mark them. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, let me end the poll here and I would broadcast the results. And 65% of you tell me that the answer for this question is choice D. I'm also getting a fair share between choices A and B, almost with 10% each. All right, now in this question, we'll learn a very important concept that we would be using throughout the next set of questions that we would be solving. So let's focus on the concept that we are learning here. Now, a very important concept in number properties, GMAT number properties, is that the dividend is equal to the divisor times quotient plus remainder, where the remainder is always less than the divisor. Now here the divisor asked in the question is 4, so the remainder should always be less than 4. Now, in the question, it is given that if a number leaves a remainder of 3 when divided by 204. So after reading this part of the question, what I would try to do is formulate this information into a mathematical expression, right? So n leaves a remainder of 3 when divided by 204. So the remainder is equal to 3 when the divisor is equal to 204. So I write the value of n to be equal to 204 times q, where q is the quotient, plus 3, where 3 is the remainder. Now, the first part of the statement, question statement, is written down as a mathematical expression. What about the second part? I need to find out what is the remainder when n is divided by 4. So I'll write n in the same manner. Here, the divisor is 4. So I'll write n to be equal to 4p, which is the quotient, plus r, which is the remainder. I'll just keep in mind one very important constraint, that the remainder should always be less than the divisor. Now, after I've made these two equations, and this might seem a bit lengthy for the first time, but and also very new for the first time. But all I want you people to just understand this approach, embrace the approach, because this would help you solve a lot of difficult questions to come. Now, so I have the two equations where I have n in both the equations at the left hand side. So what I would do is I'll try to visualize. So since I have n to both the sides of this equation, the parts of 204q plus 3 and 4p plus r are essentially similar. So what I would do is I'll try to write 204q in terms of 4p. Because if I can do that, then I'll have a relationship between the term that lies here, which is 3, and r, right? So I'll try to write these two equations in that manner. And I can see that 204q can be written as 4 times 51q. So if I assume the value of p to be equal to 51q, I can write n to be 4 times p plus 3, right? 4 times p plus 3, which is similar to what we wanted here. It's in the form of 4p plus r, right? So here the value of p becomes 51q. And now if I have the value of r, I just need to check the constraint, whether it's less than 6 or whether it's less than 4 or not. And I see, yes, 3 is less than 4. So directly I can say that this is absolutely the correct answer for this question, and that is the reason a lot of you have marked option D, which is 3. Now, how many of you think that this is a lengthy approach? Mark yes. In the yes no poll, please, can you please mark a yes if you think it's a lengthy approach? All right. Now, I presume that you people would select some numbers to solve this question. But again, it might seem lengthy to you at the first stage. It might also seem a bit confusing to you at the first stage. But I want you people to embrace this method, because the next set of questions that we are going to solve, no numbers would work on them. And if you work with numbers, there's a very high probability that you would falter in a question or two. Right. So we'll take this feedback. I'll end the poll here, and let's see if this process, if this concept is going to help you in the difficult questions or not. So what I'll do is let me take out the poll here, and let's move into the next question. Now, before I move into the next question, it's all the same. I want you people to select still solving. Let's get 60 people select still solving, and we would move to the next question. I have 50 people. Let's get 10 more people. Mark still solving, please. 4, 3, 2. Come on, 2 more. 1 more. Thanks a lot. All right, I'll stop broadcasting the results and let's go to the next question. Okay, let's take 10 more seconds to mark the answers if you have not marked them yet. 10 more seconds for this question. 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right. So in this question as well, we're going to discuss the same concept that we learned in the last question. So let me broadcast the results. And I can see 76% of you have marked choice A, which indeed is the correct answer for this question. Now, to understand this question, we'll keep in mind the same concept, that is dividend is equal to divisor times quotient plus remainder. Now the first part of the question tells me that n leaves a remainder of 6 when divided by 205. So I can write n to be equal to 205q, where q is the quotient, plus 6, where 6 is the remainder. The second part of the question asks me what is the remainder when n is divided by 5. So then the divisor here is 5. So I write n to be equal to 5p plus r. A very important constraint to note, where r is less than 5. Now, I'll come to that part where people have marked option D as the answer, but let's solve this question first. Now, again, like the previous question, we have two different equations. The LHS of these two equations are same. So that is the reason we'll try to visualize trying to make them equal. So what I'll do is I'll try to write 205q in terms of 5p to get to the value of r and to check whether I'm getting to the value of r or not. So what I can do is I can write 205q as 5 times 41q. And if I take the value of p to be equal to 41q, I can write 205q as 5p. Then the value of r becomes 6. And a lot of you have marked choice D for the same reason, because you thought that the answer for this is 6. But a very, very important constraint in this question is that the value of r always has to be less than the divisor. The divisor here is 5, right? So whenever I get a remainder of 6, I need to further segregate it down. So 6 can be written as 5 times 1 plus 1. Again, in the same form, divisor times quotient plus remainder. So when I divide 6 by 5, I get a remainder of 1, and that essentially is the answer for this question. Now, people who got this question incorrect, people who marked choices B, C, and D, let me open the poll here. I want you to tell me, where did you falter? Where did you falter in this question? People who have marked choices B, C, and D. Please mark your answers in the answer presenter question pod. Okay, you click the wrong button. But again, if you click a wrong button, you can always change your answer. I guess that won't happen the next time. Got stuck in the equation. All right. So again, it might feel a bit difficult to get this equation in your head, to try solve out all questions through this equation. But trust me, guys, we'll go to this question number 8, 9, and 10, and in those three questions, you would essentially understand the importance of this concept. Okay, so I have a question here on how did I move from 205q to be equal to 5 times 41q to 5 to p being equal to this. So basically what I'm trying to do again is same. I am trying to equate and visualize these two equations, trying to write the first equation in terms of the second equation so that I can reach to the value of r here, the value of r here, right? So in the first equation, what do I have? I have 205q, so I need to write it in the term of 5p. The moment I write it in terms of 5p, I'll get the value of r. So that is the reason I divided 205q by 5 to get the value of p to be equal to 41q. Now, again, a lot of you might think that this question would be fairly easy if I take a number to solve this question. Yes, for this question it would be. I'm not denying that. But for difficult questions, I am pretty much sure that would not work. So just let's understand this process. Let's embrace this process, and I hope this would be completely easy for all of you. All right, with that, let me end the poll here. I'll also take the answer choices poll here. What I would want you people to tell me is, out of the 5 warm-up questions, how many did you get correct? Okay, so fair share between 4 questions and 5 questions. And if you are getting 4 or 5 questions correct, I'm really very happy. But again, there are some major learnings to do for people who have not been into the 5 seconds, because these were easy questions and I wanted all of you to get all the 5 questions correct. So with that, let's discuss what we did in the warm-up section. Now, in the warm-up section, we did 5 questions, and I kept on reiterating the same thing, that you have to ensure that your concepts are clear. So one very important thing that we would note here is, please ensure that your concepts are perfectly at place. If you got 5 questions correct, it's perfectly fine. But if you could not get them correct, we would recommend you to go to your e-GMAT free trial, watch all the basic videos that are present in the trial to understand where you are going wrong. Now, the GMAT questions would require a much advanced level of application of these concepts. These were very easy these were very easy questions. The GMAT questions are far more difficult. So you need to understand 2 things. First, your concepts are at place, and secondly, you are good to go with the process of solving questions, right? With that, let me take this poll here and let me hide out the poll, and let's now move into the next set of questions. The PS questions that I was talking about, the logistics remain same. I want you to select still solving. Let's get 60 people mark still solving, and we would move into the first PS question. Okay, 50 answers, 55. Let's take 5 more people. 3, 2, 2 more, 1, 0. Thanks a lot. All right, let's move into the next question. All right, 10 more seconds for this question. If you have not marked your answers, please mark it. Let's take another 10 seconds and then discuss the solution. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So let me end the poll and broadcast the results. So I can see 42 of you, that's 53% of the class, have marked choice C as the answer, and a fair share between choices B and D, where I see 14 and 18% people, and then 5 people also marking choice A. All right, Now, before I move into the question, I want you to tell me with a yes or a no, and I'll give you the poll in another 10 seconds. How many of you calculated the value of m, that is, multiplied 8.2 with 30, and then went on solving the question? So, how many of you did this math? Mark a yes if you did. All right. Now, my second, so I'll end the poll here. My second question is to people who, to these 18 people who tells me a no. So these 18 people who tells me a no, did you apply the same formula, which is dividend is equal to divisor times quotient plus remainder? Did you use that formula? And I am really very happy if you did that. So essentially, I wanted you people to learn something, and this shows that you have that intensity, you have that knack of learning a new thing, even if it's a bit difficult for you at the first place. So I'm really happy with that. Let's end the poll. I'll take the poll here, and let's discuss this question. Now, for people who did the math, for this question, it's perfectly fine. But for the third question or the next question, it might be a bit tricky for all of you. So let's calculate the answer for this question. I've broadcasted the results. Option C is absolutely the correct answer choice. Now, I know the concept. The concept remains same. That is, dividend is equal to divisor times quotient plus remainder. A very important constraint that the remainder is always less than the divisor. So R is less than 15. So with that, let's write down the equations. If m is a positive integer and m divided by 30 is 8.2. So m is equal to 30 times 8.2. Now 8.2 can be divided into two parts. One is 8 and the remainder is 0.2. So m can be written as 30 times 8 plus 30 times 0.2, right? I need to find out what is the remainder when m is divided by 15. So I'll write m as 15p plus r. Then try to visualize and then try to equate these two equations, try to form the two equations in the same fashion so that I can get the value of r. So with that, if I visualize, what do I get? I get that the value of m can be written as 15 times 2 times 8. Now what I did is this 30 that I have, I'm trying to write it in terms of 15p. So what is 30? 30 is nothing but 15 times 2. So I've just written 13 times of 15 times 2, and then I have an 8 here, so I've written that as well. So this gives me a form of 15p, and 30 times 0.2 directly gives me the value of 6. So when I now see this equation and then see this equation, I can say that the second equation, the latter equation, is written in the form of 15p plus r, and I can also see that r is less than 15, which was the constraint in the question. Now, since r is less than 15, I'm perfectly fine to mark the answer. The answer thus is choice C. All right, let me get the poll over here. And I want you people to tell me, is the solution clear to all of you? That sounds perfect. I also see some of you having a doubt in the solution, so I'm going to reiterate the solution for all of you. So basically, the value of m would be equal to 30 times 8.2. Then I write 8.2 as 8 plus 0.2. Just divided it into the integral part and the fraction decimal part, right? Now, so the value of m is nothing but 30 times 8 plus 30 times 0.2. And what is 30 times 0.2? It's simply 6. So I've written down 6 over here. I'll try to write 30 times 8 in the form of 15p. And 30 is nothing but 15 times 2. So 30 is written as 15 times 2. I have an 8 here, which I write here. So this is now what? This is 15 times 16, right? And 15 times 16 essentially means what? It's in the form of 15p, where the value of p is equal to 16. Then I see both these equations. I see that the value of r is equal to 6. It also satisfies my constraint, so I can now say that that is the answer for my question. I hope with that, all your doubts pertaining to this question are now cleared. Okay, if it's cleared, please turn your vote from a no to yes. If it's cleared, can you please turn your vote from a no to yes? That sounds perfectly great. All right, so I'll hide the poll here. Let me clear all the answers. And I'll also clear the answers for this poll because we are now moving on the second question. So let's move on to the second question. The logistics again remain the same. I want you people to mark still solving, and then I'll show you the next question. Okay, Sajal has a very good question for me. What if 8.2 was 8.9? Again, if it was 8.9, I would have multiplied 30 with zero point 0.9, which is equal to 27. And then with that, I would have seen this constraint. 27 is not less than 15, right? So I'll divide 27 again by 15. And when I get 12, that would be the answer. Sajal, I hope it's now clear to you. And a very good question, I definitely must say. All right, so I have 57 people. Okay, let's get three more people select still solving, please. Three more people select still solving. Two more, one more. Thanks a lot. I might sound childish with this, but this is something that I really want you to do. All right, let's move into the next question. Question number 2 here on your screen. All right, 10 more seconds. 10 more seconds for this question. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. What I'll do is I'll end the poll here, and before I broadcast the results, the same question again. How many of you did the math? That is, calculate the value of m to be equal to 15 times 8.2 and then divide the number by 30. So slowly I can see the larger chunk of people converting that yes to a no, and I'm very happy with this. You might not understand the importance of this method right now, but once you solve question number 8, 9, and 10 efficiently, I'm pretty much sure you would understand that yes, it was something that we should have done before. And I'm so very happy. Thanks a lot, guys and girls. So what I'll do is I'll end the poll here, and let me take it to the backstage, and let's solve this question. Now the question tells me if m is a positive integer and m by 15 is equal to 8.2. So I'll similarly in all the last questions I'll do this as well. Now, let me broadcast the results, and I see 81% of you have marked choice C as the answer. I presume it's absolutely correct, but we need to check that once. All right, yes, it's absolutely correct. All right, so the concept again remains same, that dividend is equal to divisor times quotient plus remainder. From the first part of the question stem, I write m as 15 times 8.2, divide 8.2 into two parts, that is 8 and 0.2. So I can write it as 15 times 8 plus 15 times 0.2. And I need to find out the remainder when m is divided by 30. So m can also be written as 30p plus r, a very important constraint, that is r less than 30. So when I get the value of m, which is 15 times 8 plus 15 times 0.2, I can simply write 15 point plus point 0.2 to be equal to 3, right? So I can write that to be equal to 3, and then I have 15 times 8. Now the part 15 times 8 needs to be written in the form of 30p. What is 30? 30 is 15 times 2. So from 8, I'll take out a 2. And how do I write 8? I write 8 as 2 times 4 because I'm taking out a 2 to convert that 15 into the 30, right? So what do I write? I write 30 times p, which is now 4, plus r. In the form? Yes, it is in the form, in the same form. Is r less than 30? Yes, r is less than 30. Can I mark the answer? Obviously. So choice C becomes your answer. So see guys that the efficiency of solving these questions now from a 60 percentage has now come to an 80 percentage, which is a 33% jump. And this is what a unified approach, a unified concept would do to you. If you just give a thought, the last 4 questions that we did, we only use this concept, nothing else apart from this. Right? So this is the importance of learning a very nice concept to solve questions. All right, with that, I'll hide the poll here. Let's move on to question number 3. But you know the rules again. You need to select still solving. Let's get 60 people mark a still solving. And the faster you select still solving, the faster you get the question. So please mark it quickly. I have 55 people. Let's get 5 more people. 57. Let's get 3 more. 2 more. Come on, 2 more. 1 more. That's it. Thanks a lot. All right, I have 60 people. Let's move on to the next question. All right, so 10 more seconds for this question. Let's take another 10 seconds for this. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, let me end the poll here and broadcast the results. So I see that 53% of you have marked choice E as the answer. Another 24% of you have marked choice B. Now the difference between choice B and choice E would be very clear in another minute. Now before I move ahead, If any of you want to book a one-on-one call with one of our GMAT strategy experts to understand where you are going wrong, or if you're starting a preparation to understand what you should follow, what should be your study plan, what should be your study structure, what are the tactics that you need to follow for your GMAT, then you can click on this link that I've just popped up. And what I'll do is I'll launch it for all of you. Just click on help me score a 740 and on the browser window that just popped up at your end. You would get directed to a Calendly link. Now, in this Calendly link, you can find the dates, the open slots, and you can book a call, whichever slot is fine for you. If you do not find a slot, then what you do is write to us at support@e-gmat.com, and we would provide you a slot in accordance to your timing. Right, with that, let me hide this out here. And let's go solve this question. Now, I've already broadcasted the results, and 53% of you tell me that the answer for this question is choice E, which is absolutely the correct answer choice for this question. Now, to solve this question as well, we'll apply the same formula, which is dividend is equal to divisor times quotient plus remainder. In the first part of this question stem, I have m to be equal to 9.2 times 15. So what I do is write it in the same formula, in the same manner, right? So I write 9.2, divide 9.2 into two parts, which is 9 and 0.2. So I write m to be equal to 15 times 9 plus 15 times 0.2. Now the question asks me what is the remainder when m is divided by 30. So m should be equal to 30p plus r. A very important constraint, r is less than 30. Now, once you do this, what you get is you get the value of m to be equal to 15 times 9 plus 15 times 0.2 directly becomes 3. Now, I need to write 15 times 9 in terms of 30p. And so I need to form 30s. And how do I form 30s? I need to multiply 15 with an even number. So what I do is I divide 9 into two parts, a even number, and then whatever the residual is, so which is equal to 1. So I divide 9 to be equal to 8 plus 1. When I multiply 15 and 8, I get a 30, right? I get a multiple of 30. And with that, I have 15 times 1 plus the 3 that remain in the previous step. So 15 times 1 plus 3 essentially becomes 18, and I have a 15 times 8. Now 15 times 8, again, if you divide it into 2 times 4, because I'm trying to form 30s, then 15 times 2 becomes a 30, and I can write this as 30 times 4. Now 30 times 4 is nothing but I've tried to write it in the terms of 30p, where p is equal to 4. Now when I get this equation, what do I have? I have the equation in the form of 30p plus r, correct? I have it in the form of 30p plus r. I have to check whether I'm satisfying the constraint or not. Yes, 18 is less than 30, so I can close my eyes and directly mark option E as the answer. And I hope it's clear to all of you. What I would essentially want you people to tell me is people who mark choice B, because I can see 19 people marking choice B, where did you falter? Please answer in the answer pod. Where did you falter? People who marked choice B. Okay, Akanksha has a very interesting point. Now, she tells me, can we solve it by multiplying the equation by 2 and then divide by 2 again? You can, but in the process, what you need to keep in mind is you do not mess up with the numbers. But the thinking process of yours is absolutely correct. All right, so a lot of you made a mistake in breaking 9, right? Got it. So again, this is something that you have to keep in mind. When I want a number in form of another number, try to break it in terms of that other number. That would give you the idea of how to do it in a much efficient manner. Okay, so how did I get 3 in the solution? So basically, I divided 9.2 into two parts. One is the integral part, which is equal to 9. The other is the decimal part, which is 0.2. Now, when you multiply 15 and 0.2, you get a 3. So that's where we got a 3 in our solution. I hope it is clear to you. Muna, I hope it's clear to you. All right, with that, let's go back to the poll. And with that, all right, we will be moving to the next question. That is question number 4. But before we move to question number 4, the same process, I want you people to select a still solving. So let's get you selecting still solving. I need 60 people selecting still solving. I have 45, so let's get another 15. 55, 56, 57, 58, 50. Okay, that sounds really good. So let's move on to the next question. The next question again would be on similar lines. But before I move on to the next question, what I would essentially want you to do is answer a few questions of mine. Now, okay, Sashank has a question for me in the Q&A pod. Why could we not divide 15 times 9 as 30 times is 4.5? Now, Sashank, you can do that, but again, keep in mind that it should be written in the form of 30p plus r, where p is an integer, right? The quotient cannot be a fractional part or a fractional number or a decimal number. It always has to be an integer, Sashank, and that is the reason it cannot be written as 4.5. I hope that is clear to you. All right, with that, a very important thing that we are going to learn here. Now, before that, answer me this question. Is the concept of dividend is equal to divisor times quotient plus remainder clear to all of you? Is it understandable? So from the first question where it seemed really difficult to this question, I hope you bridged a lot of gaps there. And I'm so happy to see a lot of yeses here. So what I'll do is I'll hide the poll. Just give me one moment. Yes. Okay. All right. So I also have the still solving pieces here. But let's before going to the next question, which is question number 4, let's discuss a few pointers. Now, let's understand the concept that we have learned, the concept of dividend is equal to divisor times quotient plus remainder. Now, how would you find the remainder when I ask you, what is the remainder when 31 plus 43 is divided by 7? A very interesting way to solve that question out, or the most easiest way I would say, is just add these two numbers, 31 and 43, which comes out to be 74, and then divide 74 by r. So this is one method to solve this question. However, there's another method to solve the same question. The second method is, why don't you divide 31 with 7 first, and then again divide 43 by 7 and take out the remainder. So when you divide 31 by 7, you get a remainder of 3. When you divide 43 by 7, you get a remainder of 1. And since I needed to find out what would be the remainder for the sum, I also need to do a sum of the remainders, which comes out to be 4. Now the answer for these two questions would be same, and this is a fairly easy example to understand how to calculate remainders when, let's say, a sum is given. But if I tell you what is the remainder when 31 times 43 is divided by 7, would you be very much interested in doing the math? Please mark a yes if you are very much interested in doing the math. That is calculating 31 times 43. You won't do it, right? Because even if these numbers are small, I can give you a larger number as well. And in that case, you would either take a lot of time or mark the wrong answer. So when I have a product of two numbers, the first sequence, that is, calculating the product and then calculating the remainder, becomes a very tedious job. It takes a lot of time and you're not sure if the answer is correct or not, because this is a very big number. The second sequence works perfectly in this part, right? What is the second sequence? Divide 31 by 7. What is the remainder? It's equal to 3. Divide 43 by 7. The remainder here is equal to 1. Now, since I needed the product to be divided by 7, I need to multiply the two remainders that I got. So once I multiply, I get the remainder to be equal to 3. So when I have sum, either of these two sequences are fine. You either calculate the sum, then calculate the remainder, or calculate the remainders first, then add the remainders to get to the final answer. But when you have a product, it's a very easy to calculate the remainders for the individual parts, then multiply the remainders together to get to the final answer. Now what I'll do is I'll clear all the answers here. I want you to tell me if this concept is clear to all of you. Please mark a yes if the concept is clear to all of you. So whenever I have these kind of questions somewhere back in the head, I would be keeping this as a very important pointer. All right, I'll end the poll and clear all the answers. Now that this is done, let's understand why is the same the thing happening for the for these kind of questions. So basically we learned these two approaches. The underlying concept between this is the same one that we have learned, which is dividend is equal to divisor times quotient plus remainder. Now how do you work, how do you walk through this? So basically we had two numbers, right? 31 and 43, and the product needs to be divided by 7 to get to the answer I needed to calculate the remainder. Now 31 can be written as 7 times 4 plus 3, where 7 is the divisor, 4 is the quotient, 3 is the remainder. 43 can be written as 7 times 6 plus 1, where we just one moment please. Yes, so for 43 can be written as 7 times 6 plus 1. So when I multiply these two, so this wouldn't be a plus, this would be a multiplication. When I multiply these two, or essentially, sorry for this would be addition only. We're discussing the first part. So when I multiply these two, I get, when I add these two, so I get 7 times 4 plus 3 plus 7 times 6 plus 1. Now, in both these parts, you have a 7 common. So when you take the 7 common, what do you get? You get 7 times 4 plus 6 plus 3 plus 1, which is 7 times some number plus some number, again in the same format. Dividend is equal to divisor, which is 7, times quotient, which is 10, plus remainder, which is 4. One very important thing to note again here is you need to ensure that the remainder is less than the divisor. That is 4 is less than 7, so I'm perfectly fine with that method. Had it been that I'm getting a number greater than this, then I have to subsequently divide that part as well with 7 to get to the final remainder. So this is the underlying concept when I'm talking about addition. Now, what about when I'm talking about multiplication? You saw this method, right? So how does this method work? Now 31, as we have already written, it's 7 times 4 plus 3. 46 is 7 times 6 plus 1. When I multiply these two numbers, I get 7 times 4 plus 3 times 7 times 6 plus 1, which is of the form of a plus b times c plus d. And when I multiply these two parts, what do I get? I get a times b, a times, so let's take this to be a, let's take this to be b, let's take this to be C and this part to be D. So this would help us visualize what we're doing here. So when I multiply A plus B times C plus D, I get A times C plus B times C plus A times D plus B times D. And when I simplify this entire part here, take out the 7 common that we have, this can be written as 7 times a very big number plus another number, or in the form of 7p plus r, where p is the quotient, 7 is the divisor, 3 essentially is the remainder. So this is the underlying concept of where we use the same concept of dividend is equal to divisor times quotient plus remainder to solve these kind of questions. Now this is a very important concept, and that is the reason I would want all of you to keep a very good note of these concepts. Now with that, you have already marked still solving. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the broadcast and let's move on to the next question. We would try to apply what we have learned till now. So this is question number 4. All the All right, 10 more seconds for this question, guys. Let's take 10 more seconds. Mark the answers if you have not marked them yet. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So I'm going to end the poll and let me broadcast the results. So I see 44% of you have marked choice A, 28% of you have marked choice C. All right. So we'll apply the same concept that we have learned in the last slides in this question itself. What is the concept? The concept remains same. That is, dividend is equal to divisor times quotient plus remainder. Here we are seeing that we have to find out the remainder when two numbers are multiplied. So what is the better way? The better way is to calculate the individual remainders. So what you do is calculate what would be the remainder when 24 cube is divided by 3 and 38 to the power 5 is divided by 3, and then multiply the remainders to get the answer. But here in this question, you see that I have a number 24, which is a multiple of 3 itself. So since 24 is completely divisible by 3, the remainder that I would be getting here would be equal to 0 when I calculate the remainder for 24 to the power 3, right? Now, whatever remainder I get from the second part, since I at the end need to multiply both the remainders and any number times 0 is also 0, the remainder for this question is equal to 0. So we mark option A as the answer for this question. So I hope the answer suffices the problems, that the issues that you had in this question. But I want to know, for people who marked choice B or C, I have 27 people. I have 31 people marking choices B, C, and D. I want to know, where did you falter? Please put your answers in the answer presenter question spot. Where did you falter? Why did you choose options B, C, or D? Ignored the sign. Okay. All right. So I'm also seeing got it. So basically, two pointers here. First is, whenever we have two parts to equation or two parts to a expression, divide that into two parts, right? Calculate the remainder for the first part, calculate the remainder for the second part, then multiply the remainders to get to the final answer. Okay, so I have one question here from Diksha, who asks me, what would be the remainder in case we did want to solve for 38? We would come to that question, Diksha, in the next slides. So yes. All right. So with that, let me end the poll here and clear all the answers. And let's move on to the next question, question number 5. Let's quickly get the still solvings, please. And remember, the faster you select still solving, the faster we move on to the next question. So let's get still solvings real quick. And so Ria has a question, and she asks me what is wrong with her approach. It would really be great, Ria, if you. All right. So Ria, you just took the last digits, and that is not how we do it, right? So we need to take the entire number. Now, 4 is definitely not a multiple of 3, but 24 is. That should be your red flag, right? We need to take the entire number to solve the question and not the last digit only, right? Okay, I have the still solvings. Let's move on to question number 5. All right, 10 more seconds. 10 more seconds. Let's mark the answers if you have not marked them yet. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, because I saw a lot of you marking. All right, so let me end the poll here and broadcast the results. I see 75% of you have marked choice C as the correct answer, and I hope it's correct. So let's move into solving this question. Now, the question asks me what is the remainder when 25 times 38 whole to the power 3 is divided by 3? Again, we do the same thing, is we divide, right? So the expression can be written as 25 times 38 times 25 times 38 times 25 times 38, because I have an exponent which is equal to 3. Now let's calculate the remainder for each term. Now when I divide 25 by 3, the remainder that I get is equal to 1. And when I divide 38 by 3, the remainder that I get is equal to 2. So 1 times 2 would give me the remainder for one part. But I have three parts here. So I need to cube that, right? Now what is 1 times 2? It's equal to 2. Cube of 2 is equal to 8. But can 8 be the answer? No, because I cannot get a remainder of 8 when I divide any number by 3. The remainder should be less than the divisor. So r should be less than 3. So then I further divide 8 by 3 to get to the answer, right? So I write 8 to be equal to 3 times 2 plus 2, and then I see that yes, 2 is less than 3. So I'll mark 2 as the answer, which is choice C. All right. Is the solution clear to all of you? Are you all with me? Please mark a yes if you are. That sounds perfect. Let's now move into the next question. I'll hide the poll here. Let's move into question number 6. But before I move into question number 6, a very, very important concept that I want you people to introduce. But before that, let's first see what we did in the last two questions. In question number 4 and 5, we used an application of the concepts that we had learned, that is dividend is equal to divisor times quotient plus remainder, where we saw that when we are adding, we can calculate the individual remainders, then add the remainders to go to the answer. When we're multiplying, we can calculate the remainders for each part and then multiply to go to the answer. And when I have an exponent, then what I can do is first of all calculate the remainder to the original number, and then whatever the exponent is, we need to raise the remainder to that to find out to the next part. Okay, Shreya has a very interesting question. Can we use negative remainders? Absolutely. And that is the reason I am taking you to this next slide, which talks about negative remainders, because it's a wonderful concept to decrease the level of complexity of questions. So let's understand the concept first. Now I know just a moment. Yes. Now I know that dividend is equal to divisor times quotient plus remainder. I also know that the remainder has to be less than the divisor. The remainder also has to be a positive or has to be a non-negative number, right? So let's take two examples first. When I divide 5 by 2, I get a remainder of 1, because I can write 5 to be equal to 2 times quotient plus 1, where the quotient is equal to 2 and the remainder is equal to 1. So when I divide 5 by 2, I get a remainder of 1. But I can also do something different, which is what if I write 5 to be equal to 2 times 3 minus 1? In this case, I can see that the remainder here is equal to minus 1. Now, this essentially is nothing but negative remainders. Now, negative remainders is a wonderful concept to reduce the complexity of questions, as I already said. But before that, let's understand negative remainders taking another example. Let's take another example, which is 8 by 3. When I divide 8 by 3, I get a positive remainder of 2. But then I can also write 8 to be equal to 3 times 3 minus 1. So here the negative remainder is equal to minus 1. Now, essentially, Positive remainder is nothing but the negative remainder plus the divisor. So whenever you have a positive remainder that is equal to 1, this can be written as the negative remainder plus divisor. I do not know the divisor, but I do not know the negative remainder, but I know the divisor. So let me subtract the divisor from the positive remainder to get the negative remainder. So when I divide the divisor, which is equal to 2 here, from 1, what do I get? I get the negative remainder to be equal to -1. When I subtract 3, that is the divisor in the second example, from the positive remainder, which was 2, I get -1, which is the negative remainder. Now, the concept of negative remainders are wonderful. They help you solve difficult questions with ease. They reduce the complexity of calculations. They reduce the calculations for you. However, a very important thing to remember with respect to negative remainders is that negative remainders can never be the answer. So we essentially use negative remainders to reduce the complexity of the question. Keep that in mind. It can never be the answer because in mathematics, we have two very important things. One is that r should be less than the divisor. The second is r has to be a non-negative number. So how can a negative number be a remainder? Not possible. So whenever you mark the answer, if you have a negative remainder, make sure you convert it back to a positive remainder. How do you do that? Using the same formula that we have learned. That is, the positive remainder is equal to the negative remainder plus the divisor, or the negative remainder is equal to the positive remainder minus the divisor. A very important concept, and you would see that this concept would help you solve difficult questions with ease. But before I move on to that part, I just want you people to tell me, is the concept of negative remainders clear to all of you? So the concept of positive remainders, I'm pretty sure, is clear to all of you. How do you calculate negative remainders? It's as simple as using this statement to calculate. You just need to subtract the divisor from positive remainder to get to the negative remainder. Just keep in mind one thing, that the constraints that the question would provide you implicitly, not explicitly, right? So whenever you mark the answer, do not mark a negative remainder as the answer. Always convert into a positive remainder and then mark the answer. So Ria has a question, where is it used? Now, this would be used in the next set of questions that we would be doing. So as of now, you are seeing some easy calculations. What if the calculations are a bit difficult? In those kind of questions, it would be easy for you to understand why are we using negative remainders. So let's move on to question number 6. And what I want you people is to mark as still solving, and then let's check out how to use the concept of negative remainders in questions. Let's quickly get some people. Mark a still solving. I have 40 people. Let's get this number to 50. 48, 49, 50, 51. That's good. Okay, I'll click on broadcast. No, I'll stop broadcasting the results and let's move on to the next question. All right, 5 more seconds to mark the answer. 4, 3, 2, and 1. So in the previous step, we learned about negative remainders. We did not know about what is the utilization of negative remainders. In this question, we would try to understand what is the utilization of the negative remainders. Now, what is the question telling me? It's asking me what is the remainder when 24 times 3, 24 to the power 3 times 38 to the power 5 plus 17 to the power 7 is divided by 3. So let's calculate this. Now 24 to the power 3, something familiar to the first question if you people remember. Now 24 to the power 3 is nothing but again would give me a remainder of 0. Why? Because 24 is a multiple of 3. It's perfectly divisible by 3. So I'll get a remainder of 0 from here. Whatever I have with that would also not affect my remainder because the total overall the product would be equal to 0. So I only have another part to this question, which is 17 to the power 7. Now I need to find out what is the remainder when I divide 17 to the power 7 with 3. Now let me open the answer Atreya's question poll, and I want you people to tell me what is the remainder, positive, negative, whatever you use to solve this question. Please mark your answer in the answer presenters question pod. What did you take? What is the remainder when you divided 17 by 3? So a few people took 2, a few people marked 1, a minus 1 as well. So I'll end the poll here and let's see what is the difference that the entire scenario creates. Now, when I write 17, it can be written as 3 times 6 minus 1, or it can also be written as 3 times 5 plus 2. So here, plus 2 is the remainder, the positive remainder. If I take this part, which is 3 times 5 plus 2, the remainder here is equal to 2, I would essentially have to calculate 2 to the power 7. Now, tell me, let me bring the yes no poll. Would you be calculating 2 to the power 7? Or let's say it would have been 3 to the power 7. Would you be calculating a 3 to the power 7 in the exam hall? Or maybe a 4 to the power 7? Obviously not. So what I'll do is I'll write 2 as a negative remainder. How do I do that? I subtract the divisor. What is the divisor? It's equal to 3. So I subtract 3 from 2. What do I get? I get 1. So essentially, the negative remainder is equal to 1. And we have already discussed in the previous questions, if I get a remainder, I need to consider the power to the remainder as well to reach to the final answer. So I'll not calculate 2 to the power 7. I'll indeed calculate minus 1 to the power 7. And this is a much easy calculation. Now, minus 1 to the power 7 returns me a value of minus 1, right? Because the power is odd. And minus 1 to the power odd returns me a minus 1. So minus 1, is minus 1 the answer? No. I told you this before, that whenever you use negative remainders, please ensure that you change the negative remainder to a positive remainder to mark the answer, because negative remainders are only used for simplifying the calculations. They can never be the correct answer. So here I have to change minus 1 to a positive remainder. How do I do that? Again, by the same formula that we have learned. The value of negative remainder plus the divisor would give me the positive remainder. So I add a 3 here. I get the value to be equal to 2. And that is the reason I marked option D. So, okay, let me clear all the answers. Tell me, is the solution and the application of negative remainders now clear to all of you? It's a wonderful concept, and we'll see another question related to this concept. Right? Let's move into the next question then. What I would do is I'll bring in the poll. Just give me one moment, please. All right, I have the poll here. I'll open the poll. Let me hide this one part here. And yes, I have the poll for you. So please mark as still solving. You know the rules. We'll go to the next question. All right, let's go to question number 7. All right, 5 more seconds if you have not marked your answers. 5 more seconds for this question. 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, let me end the poll here and broadcast the results. I see 80% of you have marked choice E as your answer. Choice E is absolutely correct. Now we'll use the same thing that we have learned in the last questions. So 24 to the power 3 times 38 to the power 5 plus 17 to the power 7 when divided by 6. I need to calculate the remainder. Again, 24. This is perfectly divisible by 6. So I get a remainder of 0. So even if I get a remainder from 38, it won't matter. So I can completely, not consider this part. So let's move on to the next part, which is 17 to the power 7 divided by 6. What is the remainder here? Now the remainder here would be, the positive remainder here would be plus 5. But are you willing to calculate 5 to the power 7? Please mark a yes or a no in the yes no bowl. Are you willing to calculate a 5 to the power 7 in your exam? Definitely not, correct? Definitely not. So you need to turn this positive remainder into the negative remainder to ease your calculations. And when you turn this to a negative remainder, you just subtract the divisor, which is 6, you get the negative remainder to be equal to -1. So the question now is -1 to the power 7. Again, -1 to the power an odd number returns me a -1. Can -1 be the answer? No, it cannot, because negative remainders cannot be the answer. I need to change that into positive remainder. How do I do that? I add the divisor once more to bring back to the answer. So I get 5, and then I can say that option choice E is the correct answer choice. All right, so I'll clear all the answers. What I need you to tell me is this concept really interesting? Are you finding this concept really interesting? It would ease your calculations, but use this with the constraints that the negative remainder cannot be the answer. A lot of times you would find the first option to be the negative remainder, and you would be at times you would feel that this is the answer. But once you keep the constraints in mind, I'm perfectly sure that that you would do it rightly. Okay, so yeah, so a question for me. You can break down. So he tells me that you can break down 5 to the power 7 to, again, yes, that can be possible, Sayash. But why would I take even those 30 seconds extra to calculate? I can simply convert 5 to -1, because -1 to the power anything is too easy for me to calculate, right? So I'm saving those 30 seconds. And in 4 or 5 questions, if you save those 30 seconds each, you get to solve another or 2 questions more in the exam, right? So that is what we are looking for to give you. Okay, so Arnav has another question for me. Is it a coincidence that 2 to the power 7 gives a remainder of 2 and 5 to the power 7 gives a remainder of 5? I did not get your question properly, Arnav, so maybe you can type it in a bit more elaborative way, and then I can take it forward. All right, so I'll take the poll here, hide out the poll, and you guys did a very good job in this question, I must say, because 80%, more than 80% of you got this question correct. So the last 2 questions that we solved, we used negative remainders, and we saw that negative remainders can help simplify the calculations really easy for us. So you can use negative remainders in solving questions, but with this part that you cannot write that as the answer, you cannot choose that as the answer. So you always have to convert a negative remainder to a positive remainder at the final stage. Also, the most important formula that you need to use is positive remainder is equal to negative remainder plus divisor. All right, now the moment of truth. So the first 3 questions that we did, question number 8, question number 9, and question number 10, we would be moving to those questions once more. Now, the only advantage that we have right now is we learn a lot of things during the last 1.5 hours, which we would take as a feedback to ourselves and we'd use those concepts to now answer the question. right? So again, the process remains same. What I would want you people is to select still solving. Let's get those people selecting still solving, please. Let's have 50 people select still solving, please. Okay, got Arnav's question now. Yes, it's merely a coincidence, Arnav. It's merely a coincidence in these two questions, in the last two questions. Yes. All right. So what I would do, I'll go to the next three questions, the 700 plus level of questions that we first solved. So these are the three questions. We'll first solve question number 8. This is the question. All the best, guys. All right, let's take another 10 seconds to mark our answers if you have not marked that yet. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, let's now understand the question. Now, the question asks me, what is the remainder when the positive integer p is divided by another positive integer m, and a constraint is given on m, that is m is greater than 1. So m can be 2, 3, 4, all these numbers. So m is a positive integer, m is greater than 1. Right now, before moving into the question, let's first try to get what can we interpret from the question statement. Right, so what we would do is, first of all, see what is the question statement telling us. Now the statement tells us that we need to find the remainder when p is divided by m and m is greater than 1. Not much given in the question, right? So let's go to the first statement and see if the first statement gives us the answer or not. The first statement tells me that p is equal to m plus 1 to the power 8. So we need to divide p by m, right? So we divide p by m and we write p by m to be equal to m plus 1 to the power 8 by m. So what are the two things that we have learned? First, you don't have to consider the power right at the start. Once you get the remainder, then use the exponent to get to the final answer. So as of now, let's not consider the power. Let's not consider the value 8 here. So we'll just take the remainder. What is the remainder when m plus 1 is divided by m? Now, again, the same process we did in the last questions. We'll divide m plus 1 into two parts, that is m and then 1. Then divide m by m first. Now, when I divide m by m, it's completely divisible, right? The remainder is always equal to 0. But when I divide 1 by m, and I know that m is a positive integer and greater than 1, which means let's say n is equal to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, any such number. Now, what happens when you divide 1 by 2 or 3 or 4? The remainder is always equal to 1, right? When you divide 1 by any positive integer apart from 1. So basically this entire expression now translates to 1 to the power 8. And what is the value of 1 to the power 8? The value is equal to 1. So yes, I can reach to the answer with this statement. Now, before I move on to the next analysis, to the analysis of the next statement, what I want to people to tell me if it's clear to all of you. So just give me one moment. I'll give you the yes no poll to mark your answers. Is it clear to all of you up till this stage? Okay, I see a lot of people marking a no as well. So I'll explain the step once more. Now I need to find out the remainder when m plus 1 to the power 8 is divided by m. Consider what we learned in the last few questions. The first thing is we don't have to consider the exponent right at the start. So we'll keep the exponent out. We don't have to consider right at the start. What other things? Whenever we have addition, we divide it into two parts. Remember the example of 31 and 43. We divide it into two parts, correct? Here as well, we'll divide m and 1 into two parts. Once we'll divide m by m, the remainder would be equal to 0. The other part, which is 1, I'll divide 1 by m, the remainder would be equal to 1. Why? Because m is a positive integer which is greater than 1. So what are the possibilities? Let's say m is equal to 2, or let's say 3 or 4 or 10. Now what is the remainder when you divide 1 by 2? It's always 1. 1 by 3 it's 1. 1 by 10 it's 1. 1 by 20 it's 1. So if 1 is divided by any positive integer m which is greater than 1, the remainder is equal to 1. So from this entire part, we'll add the remainders. From here we got a remainder of 0, from here we got a remainder of 1. So the total remainder was 1. Now we bring in the exponent which is equal to 8. So 1 to the power 8 becomes 1. We get to the remainder, so the first statement is sufficient to answer the question. Now, if it's now clear, please turn your vote to a yes from a no. If it's clear, please turn your vote to a yes from a no. All right, that sounds great. So what I'll do is let me hide out the poll and clear all the answers for the poll. I'll use it again in the next question. So the first statement is sufficient. That gives us what? The answer is either option A or option choice D. So we need to look at the second statement. The second statement tells me that the value of m is equal to 8. I have the value of m, but I do not have any information about p. So the second statement is not a sufficient statement for us to answer the question. And that is the reason D, option choice D, cannot be the answer, which makes option choice A the correct answer choice for this question. So let me broadcast the results and see how you did this. So I have 37% of you marked choice A, 43% of you marked choice C. So guys, mark a yes if the solution is clear to all of you. Please mark a yes if the solution is clear. All right, that's good. All right, let's move into the next question. So let's move into question number 9. What I'll do is I'll hide out the answer pod here. Let me bring the poll for question 9. You know the rules. Select still solving, please. We'll go to the next question. Let's get 50 people mark a still solving, please. Let's get 50 people mark a still solving. We have 41 people, 42. Let's get 8 more. 45. Let's get 5 more. Quickly guys, let's go to question number 9. Please select still solving. Let's go to question number 9. Okay, I am at 49 right now. 50, that's good. Let's move on to question number 9. All right, 5 more seconds for this question. Let's take another 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, let me end the poll here and broadcast the results. So I can see that 37% of you have marked choice A as the answer. 26% of you have marked um, choice D as the answer. All right, let's understand this question. Now, before we move into solving this question, a very important step in this question is to interpret what the question stem is giving us. What information is the question stem giving us? So first of all, let's understand the question stem. And the question tells me if n is a positive integer, what is the remainder when 38 to the power n square is divided by 13? So I need to find out what is the remainder when 38 to the power n square is divided by 13, and is also given that n is a positive integer, so n is greater than 0. Now, again, two different processes. You can either write 38 as 13 times 3 minus 1, or you can write 38 as 13 times 2 plus 12. Now, I'll open the answer pod here, the answer presenter's question pod here. You need to tell me what is easy, calculating minus 1 or calculating with 12. What would be an easy process? Obviously calculating with minus 1, right? So we'll use the same thing. We'll write minus 1 to the power n squared. Now, there can be two possibilities. We only know that n is a positive integer. We do not know if it's even or odd. So there can be two cases. Either n is even or n is odd. Now, when n is odd, I would have what? I would have minus 1 to the power an odd number. And what is the meaning of minus 1 to the power an odd number? It means minus 1 itself. So what would be the remainder in that case? The remainder would be minus 1, or essentially turned into a positive remainder, which is equal to 12. This is when n is an odd number. Now, when n is an even number, what do I get? I get minus 1 to the power an even number. And we know whenever the exponent is even, minus 1 would convert to a positive 1, right? So then in that situation, I would get the remainder to be equal to plus 1. Now, what I want you people to tell me is how many of you did this step before moving into the analysis of the question statements? The analysis of the two statements, statement 1 and 2. How many of you did this step? So your answer to this question is really very important, because if you want to master GMAT data sufficiency, then you need to understand what is the information given in the question stem before you move into the statements. You know, we say that 50% of the questions, the information given in the questions in DS questions, in 50% of those questions, if you are able to rightly solve out the information that's given in the question stem, you would be able to solve the question properly as well. So that's really very, very important. The implicit information that's given in the question stem, or the explicit information, whatever, either way, you need to understand what the information is speaking to you. What is it trying to tell you? Only with that you can master GMAT data sufficiency. Right? So with that, let's understand, with that information, let's understand how do we proceed in the question. So we have two possibilities. If n is odd, the remainder is 12. If n is even, the remainder is plus 1. So let's go to the first statement. The first statement tells me that n leaves no remainder when divided by 4. It means what? It means that n is of the form of 4k plus 0, or n is of the form of 4k. Now, if m is of the form of 4k, it means it's an even number. So we already know if it's an even number, we can reach to the answer. So with statement 1, the first statement is sufficient for us to reach into the answer. With that, let's move on to the second statement. The second statement tells me root under of n is only divisible by 1 and itself. So what are the numbers in number theory which are divisible by only one in itself, they are the prime numbers, correct? Now, if we are talking about prime numbers, then I am literally saying that root of n is equal to a prime number, or if I square both these parts, we get n to be a whole square of a prime number. Now, prime numbers can either be even, for example, 2, or can be odd, for example, 3, 5, 7, and all the next set of prime numbers, right? So, prime numbers can either be even or odd. A very, very important constraint, a very, very important piece of information to solve this question efficiently. So since from the second statement, I cannot for a surety say that yes, it's an odd number or an even number, I cannot say that the second statement is sufficient to mark this answer, and that is the reason the answer for this question cannot be D and has to be option choice A. So 33% of you got this question correct. Now, what I would want you people to tell me is just mark a yes in the yes no poll if the solution is clear to all of you. All right. So again, in this question, what we found out is the importance of negative remainders. Now, I have a question from Paulina who asks me, how were I able to take out uh, the value of exponent outside the parentheses? No, basically, when we were solving those previous questions, what we focused on is just calculate what the number is giving you, what the remainder is when you just divide the number with the divisor. If once you get to the value of the remainder, then include the value of the exponent, multiply get to the value of exponent, then you can reach to the final answer. But the preliminary step is essentially to calculate only the remainder for the first number first, and not calculate the exponent. So we can eliminate, or we can ignore the exponent at the first step, bring it on a later stage, just for the sake of easing the calculations. Okay, Tanya has a question. I did not understand how the remainder is 1 if n is even. When n is even, the value of -1 to the power even becomes what? -1 to the power even becomes +1. So that is the reason where the remainder is equal to 1. All right. Sudeep has a question. If I find the exact value of n, I can solve this. From 1 we get this, and 2, why not see? Again, if I if the first statement is sufficient, I don't have to move to choice C, correct? So choice C tells me that any of the statements are alone not sufficient. If the first statement is sufficient, I don't have to move to choice C. Either A is the answer or D is the answer. So that is the reason why we would not consider option C as the answer for this question. Right? With that, let's move on to the last question. And the last question is a personal favorite of mine. It is also the most difficult question for this session. So what we would do is, again, mark still solving. So let's get 50 people marking still solving, please. Let's get to the part of 50. And it would be a very nice experience solving the 10th question now that you have learned about the basics. Okay, I have 43. Let's go to 50. Need 7 more people to mark a still solving. I am at 45, 47. 3 more. Quickly, guys, quickly. Let's go to question number 10. All right, 2 more, 2 more, 1 more. Thanks a lot. All right, let's move on to the 10th question. All right, let's take 10 more seconds for marking the answer for this question. Let's take another 10 seconds, please. All right, so what I'm gonna do is now end the poll and let's see how you did for this question. I can see 26% of you marked option choice A, a fair share of people marking choices B, C, and E, and a 38% of you marking choice D. Now, the answer for this question, we'll find that out. Um, but let's again do the same process again. So the question statement, to solve a DS question properly, I need to infer what is the question statement giving me. So that implicit, explicit information that's there in the question statement, I need to understand that properly. Now, in the question, it is given that what is the remainder when 4m is divided by 16, where m is a positive integer greater than 1. So what are the constraints? M is a positive integer greater than 1. And we need to find out what is the remainder when 4m is divided by 16. So we'll use we'll use the basic concept again. What is the basic concept? What the value of a dividend is equal to the divisor times the quotient plus the remainder. So the dividend is equal to divisor plus quotient q plus remainder. We need to keep in mind that the quotient is a non-negative integer and the remainder lies between 0 and 15 both included. It also has to be less than the divisor here, which is 16. So the value of r needs to be between 0 and 5 both included, right? So this is the question statements analysis. Now again, the same question. Let me bring in the yes no poll for all of you, and I want you people to tell me how many of you wrote these statements down in your notebook before going to solving the question, before moving into the statements. So yes, this is what I want you people to do. Again, like the concept of dividend is equal to divisor times quotient plus remainder, during the first few days, it might seem a bit difficult to write all these things down. It might seem that you're wasting time, but trust me, you would get a lot of importance. You would get a lot of positive feeling when you write these things down, because when you have this thing written, the chances of making an error with the constraints, with the question stem, with the information that's given in the question is fairly minimum, right? So that is the reason I want all of you to start this habit, inculcate this habit within yourself. This is one of the good habits that you need to inculcate within yourselves if you want to master GMAT data sufficiency, right? With this information, let's move into the first statement. Now, the first statement tells me that m leaves a remainder of 4 when divided by 32 to the power 32. So the value of m can be written as 32 to the power 32, that is the divisor, times the quotient, which is equal to k, plus the remainder, which is equal to 4. This is what I got from the statement, right? Let me hide the yes no poll here. Yes. All right. So this is the information that I'm getting from the first statement. Now, this is the value of m. I need to find out about 4m. So I'll multiply this entire part with 4, right? So the value of 4m would be 4 times what I had, the value of m. Now, when you simplify the value here, when you simplify the RHS, what do you find out? You find out that the value of 4m is nothing but 4 times 32. I've taken 132 out from this 32 to the power 32 here. So I get 4 times 32 to the power 31 times k plus 4 times 4. So I multiply this 4 with this 4 as well, right? So which is essentially equal to 16. Now, 4 times 32, this can be written as 4 times 4 times 8. So 32 can be broken down into 4 times 8. And what is 4 times 4? It's 16. So this can be written as 16 times a very large number, this very large number, which is 8 to the 8 times 32 to the power 31 times k. A number that we don't really require, right? And with that, we have another 4 times 4, which is equal to 16. So 4m can be written in the form of 16p plus 16. If you take 16 common, you get p plus 1. So 4m can be written in the form of 16k, right? 4m can be written in the form of 16k plus 0. Now, what is the meaning of 0? It means that the remainder here is equal to 0. So that gives me that the first statement is a sufficient statement to answer this question. Now, how many of you are with me till this step? How many of you are with me till this step? Is it clear up till this point? All right. All right, cool. So I'm going to end the poll here and let's move into the next statement, that is statement number 2. The statement number 2, the second statement is a bit difficult statement to comprehend. And the statement gives me what? It tells me that the value of m cube is divisible by 16. So essentially, m cube is divisible by 16. Now let me write m to be equal to 2 to the power a times p1 to the power b times p2 to the power c. What are these? I'm writing m in its prime factorized manner, right? In its prime factorized form. So 2, P1, P2 are all the prime factors, A, B, C are the exponents to the prime factors. A very important piece of information to note here that the exponents cannot be a non-integral and they cannot be a negative number. They can be a non-negative number, they has to be integral in nature. Till this point, are you all with me? Please mark a yes if you all of you are with me. Okay, I see some of you facing an issue, so I'll explain it again. So basically, I've just written m in its prime factorized form, right? How do we write any number in its prime factorized form? We write down the prime factors of that number, and then we use the exponents of the prime factors, right? So, for example, 36. 36 can be written as it can be written as 4 times 9, which is 2 to the power 2 times 3 to the power 2, right? So this is what 2 and 3 are the prime factors, and these are the exponents of the number. So I've written m, or essentially 36. For example, I've written that number in its prime factorized form. A very important thing to note, now if you have seen the videos on primes, it would be clear to you. If you have not, and that was the reason I wanted you people to see those videos, a very important thing with prime factorized form is the exponents cannot be they cannot be essentially non-integral in nature. If the exponents are non-integral in nature, then the number itself would become non-integral, correct? So the exponents are non-integral. This is not a possibility, first. Second, the exponents has to be a non-negative number, otherwise it would give me a fraction. Okay, so Letitia has a question for me. How do I know that 2 is a prime factor of m? Basically, okay, you got it, but still, so it's given in the question, it's divisible by 16. If it's divisible by 16, it has to have a 2, right? So we'll go to that part now. So now we have written m to be equal to 2 to the power a times p1 to the power b times p2 to the power c, right? Now cubing both sides, because in the statement I have m cubed, so I need to cube both sides. So m cube would be 2 to the power 3a times p1 to the power 3b times p2 to the power 3c, and so on. Now I'm not much focused about the rest of the parts. I'm more focused about 2. Why? Because in this question statement, in the statement, it's given that m cube is divisible by 16. And when is a number divisible by 16? When a number has 2 to the power 4 in it, right? So here, if I compare this part, that m has 2 to the power 3a, and I know that m has to have 2 to the power 4, it essentially means that 2 to the power 3a has to be greater than equal to 2 to the power 4, or essentially 3a has to be greater than equal to 4. Now I'm going to clear all the answers. I want you to tell me if you people are with me till this step. Are you guys with me till this step? Okay, I find a few people saying no, so I'll again explain the step to you. I've written m, then I've cubed both the parts, correct? Now, when I cube both the parts, I got 2 to the power 3a. Now, 2 to the power 3a, essentially contained in m cube, is divisible by 16. M cube is divisible by 16. So let's take an example of 36. If I write 36 is divisible by 4, it essentially means that it has to have a 4 inside it, right? So I have to have a 4. Now, since I have to have a 16 inside it, I say that the value of 2 to the power 3a has to be equal to or greater than the value of 2 to the power 4. I have to have that number inside the primary number that's given in the statement. So if I compare only the exponents, so what I wrote is 2 to the power 3a has to be greater than equal to 2 to the power 4. So essentially 3a has to be greater than equal to 4 if I consider the exponents only. If I consider the exponents, then I get the value of a. The value of a has to be greater than equal to 4 by 3. Now I told you that in all prime factorized forms, values of the exponents need to be integral. So what is the minimum integral value which is greater than 4 by 3? It's equal to 2. So at a minimum, I have to have a 2 to the power 2 in my m. In m, I have to have a 2 to the power 2 at a minimum. Now, when I calculate that, the rest part really becomes very easy. So I have to have a 2 to the power 2, and the rest part I have something else. I don't really care about that. We can ignore that part. I have the value of m. What I need is to calculate the value of 4m because that's what's asked in the question, right? So 4m would be 4 times 2 to the power 2 times something. I'm ignoring something this part as of now because this would not add value to my expression. So when I calculate the value of 4m, this gives me 4 times 2 to the power 2, which is essentially a 4. So this gives me a 16, right? So 16 times something which can be written as a q. So 4m is of the form of 16q plus 0. And what does this 0 mean? It means that the remainder is equal to 0. So the second statement as well is a sufficient statement to answer this question, which makes the answer for this question as option D. Now, okay, Akanksha has a question for me. If a minimum is 2, then 2's exponent would be 6 at a minimum. That is for m cube, right, Akanksha? We are looking for m. We are looking for m here because we're not looking for m cube. We are looking for 4m. For 4m, we need m, right? And for m, we have to go to 2 to the power 2, 2 raised to the power 2, right? All right, so I'm going to clear all the answers. I want you to tell me, is the solution clear to all of you? Now, this is a difficult question. I completely agree with you, but this question has a lot of learning attached to it. So once you get this question, solving other GMAT level questions would also become really easy for you. Right? All right, I see all of you are clear with the answer for this question. So I'm going to clear the yes no poll here. Let me hide out the poll over here. Just one moment, please. All right, cool. So I'm going to end the poll and clear all the answers. So tell me, guys, after all of this learning, do you still think that you need to be a math wizard to essentially master GMAT Quant? Do you think that you need to be a math wizard to master GMAT Quant? If you think, then I have some really interesting stories for you. Mastering GMAT Quant is not at all difficult. You can improve from a low quant score to a Q51 in record time if you follow some good habits. And what are the good habits? The habits that we talked in this entire session. So we were talking about how to use the concepts that we learned, how to apply those concepts that we learned in questions, and how not to use those faltering concepts, that is taking random numbers to solve questions, going through the shortcuts and all to solve questions. That's not the way GMAT wants you to take the test. Now remember, GMAT is completely different from other tests. It's a very structured test, and that is the reason GMAT wants you to be structured in your preparation as well. So let me give you some examples, and I'm very sure that you would be very much fascinated, because you still feel, some of you still feel that you need to be a GMAT, you need to be a math whiz to master GMAT Quant. Now I'm going to talk about some success stories that we recently had. The first success story that I'm going to talk to you about is of Krish. Now, you can read his full story on GMAT Club. He has a verified review over there. Now, Krish had always excelled in maths, normal maths. But, despite being a GMAT, despite being a topper in math, he was unable to excel on GMAT Quant. Now, the reason for that was basically two things. First is, like many of you, he would also jump to solving questions, ignoring the implicit and explicit constraints mentioned in the question. And many a times he did not even consider all the cases, and he failed to draw those inferences from the question stem that we saw in the DS questions that we were solving. However, he once he understood the e-GMAT way of doing things, the structured processes, he understood that he had to take a step back. So he applied those process skills and then started solving questions. Once he did that, he was able to improve from a Q48 to a perfect Q51, getting a 740 in the exam. Now let's look at another story for people who think that it's really easy to master GMAT Quant, for people who think that without a structured process without a structured process it's still easy to master GMAT Quant. No, that's absolutely not the case. The second story, is of Leonardo, and Leonardo is a South American, and he was a student who was good in quant, but despite being good, he was unable to cross that Q45 mark. And what was the reason? Two major things. Like Krish, he also did not follow a methodical approach. And secondly, there were some topics such as algebra inequalities and absolute inequalities where he did not have the proper fundamentals. The key to success for Leonardo was to first identify his weakness. Now, and here is the point where he had used our quant Scholaranium tool. Now, the quant Scholaranium tool gives you a constant feedback on your level of preparation, where you are going wrong, so that you can use that feedback to your advantage, understand your faltering points, work on those points, and then go on to score a perfect Q50 or a Q51. So once Leo did that, he was able to improve his score from a Q45 to a Q49 in very less time. And not only that, he got into Stern, Tepper, and Wharton. Ultimately, going into Wharton, a school, essentially at Q51 seemed a very distant dream. Now, the third story is for people who are really who think that they're really weak in quant. The third story is essentially of Mazibar, and Mazibar is a person who was scoring really less in his quant papers. He was stuck at a Q30, which is almost around the 20 percentile range. He spent a lot of time reading quant books, which I'm sure a lot of you are also doing. So he spent a lot of time reading quant books, but even after doing that, he could not increase his score. So then he used our course. Then he used that learning methodology. The learning methodology is very simple, guys. It's essentially what we did today itself. We started off with concepts, then we did some easy questions, then I just held your hand and took you forward to some medium level of questions, then you started solving the difficult questions on your own. So this is a progressive system and a progressive environment that is really very important for you to understand, and for you to reach to that Q50 Q51 range. So he did all of that. He used Scholaranium as well. You can read his review on GMAT Club. He used all of that, and from a 20 percentile, he reached to a Q45, which is almost the 60 percentile in GMAT. Right, and that's a good jump. The next story is for people who think you need to be a math whiz. This is specifically for you. Now, this is for Guillermo, and Guillermo was a person who did not know the basics well, and he wanted to excel on GMAT Quant because he wanted to get into the top B schools. Now, he excelled from a Q38 to a Q50. He had to go through all the stages of learning, starting with the basics. Then he built an approach, the methodical approach that we keep on telling you. And then he used the Scholaranium tool to excel. After he used this entire process, the progressive process that we talk about, he got into Wharton amongst other schools. This reason, I specifically like this example is because it demonstrates that you don't need to be disheartened with a low starting score. Even he had a Q38. Rather, if you practice, if you want to go to a good top B school, then you need to believe in yourself, and that is something I constantly tell my students. If you believe in yourself, if you have that motivation within yourself, things would automatically start coming to you, because you would be ready to take that challenge up. Just as today, let me take this example. Just as today, the first time you saw that dividend is equal to divisor times quotient plus remainder, almost 70% of you told me that it's a longer approach. It's an approach that you wouldn't take to solve questions. However, once you understood the flavor of that concept, you understood the importance of that concept, it really became very easy for you to grasp it, inculcate that within your habits, and started following the same concept. Maybe for a lot of you, it was the first time you were using that concept in solving today's questions, correct? So this is why I constantly tell that it's just the difference of the good habits that you need to inculcate within yourselves to get to that target quant score of yours. Nothing more than that. So with that, we have come to the end of this webinar, and